Okay, wow, you've sent me a ton of material to go through about emotional resilience in the workplace.
Yeah, I'm really trying to get a handle on.
It seems like you're really trying to understand how to build a more resilient team, a more engaged team, and ultimately a more productive team. And I think that that's really smart, you know? The old grind them down approach doesn't really work anymore.
No, not at all. The research is clear. Employees who can weather the storms, who can adapt to change, and who can, keep their cool under pressure are the ones who are driving real success for companies.
So for this deep dive, we're going to look at two articles that you sent over.
Okay?
One is a data-driven, really in-depth look at all the statistics and strategies behind resilience.
Mhm.
Then the other one is fascinating because it brings in a psychologist's perspective.
Okay.
So it goes a little beyond just the individual and really looks at how organizations themselves can make a difference.
That's great because we can look at the hard numbers that prove that resilience is more than just a feel-good thing.
Right,
It's really critical to the bottom line.
right.
And then we can explore how to actually make it happen.
Exactly. I mean, our goal here is not just to summarize these articles for you, it's to really extract the nuggets of gold, the stuff that'll make you, as a listener, say, okay, I can use this.
Exactly.
All right. So, first up, to kind of set the stage here, paint a picture in your mind. Imagine almost an entire month of workdays per employee lost to stress.
Wow.
That was the reality in the UK, and this was a while back, but still relevant. In 2007 and 2008, 13.5 million workdays gone, it's just poof, gone because of stress.
Wow.
And so think about the impact that kind of stress would have on your team's productivity if it just went unchecked.
It really highlights the cost of neglecting emotional well-being.
Right.
It's not just about feeling good. It's really about creating a work environment where people can perform at their best without, burning out. And the research even shows that resilience is 3 times more powerful for productivity than perks like a gym membership or even having a supportive boss.
Wait, 3 times more powerful than having a supportive boss.
That's what the research shows.
That really surprised me because I would think having someone, who's kind of got your back would make a huge difference.
Sure, yeah. And, those traditional supports are great, don't get me wrong, gym memberships and all that, but they're really treating the symptoms, not the underlying cause. Resilience is about equipping people with the skills to actually handle whatever comes their way, to navigate stress without losing their effectiveness.
So it's not about never feeling pressure. It's about having the tools to deal with it, to adapt.
Exactly. Think of it as an internal toolkit for your emotions.
I like that.
And here's the good news. These aren't innate traits. You're either born with them or you're not. They're actually learnable skills.
Okay, that gives me hope.
It should.
Because the next stat is a little bit of a downer.
Okay.
Only 30% of employees are considered truly resilient.
Right.
That's a huge opportunity for improvement, right? I mean, that's the majority of people who are not in that resilient category.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the individual employee either. Organizations really have a massive role to play in creating a culture that fosters resilience.
Yeah.
It's a competitive advantage because the teams that can handle pressure and adapt to change and support each other, those are the ones that are going to thrive in the long run.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts here a little bit. What are some of the tools in this resilience toolkit that we're talking about?
All right?
The first article lays out some key components, and it's emotional intelligence, effective coping mechanisms, stress management skills, self-awareness, and adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that seems like a lot to juggle all at once, you know?
It might sound overwhelming, but if you break it down, it actually becomes quite manageable. Emotional intelligence helps us to understand and manage our own emotions, as well as the emotions of the people around us.
Okay,
That allows us to have more empathy.
right.
It allows us to have stronger relationships, which are critical when things get tough.
So emotional intelligence really helps us navigate the people side of things.
Absolutely.
What about the rest?
Well, effective coping mechanisms and stress management skills, those go hand in hand. It's all about having healthy ways to deal with pressure, whether that's taking a break or practicing mindfulness or, seeking support from others.
So instead of letting stress kind of bottle up and explode, you've got kind of a release valve, a way to channel that energy.
Absolutely.
Then we have self-awareness, which I think is something that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah,
Because self-awareness is really about identifying what your personal stress triggers are, what kinds of coping mechanisms work best for you.
exactly.
It's like knowing your own instruction manual, right?
Exactly.
Some people need to go for a run to de-stress. Some people need quiet time with a book.
Yeah.
Knowing yourself is key.
Knowing yourself is key. And then finally, there's adaptability. being able to roll with the punches, adjust to new situations, and find solutions even when things don't go according to plan.
Which, let's be honest, is pretty much always.
All the time.
And that seems especially relevant, I think, in today's world where everything is changing at warp speed.
It's no longer a nice to have. It's essential for navigating, the constant evolution of the workplace.
Okay, so these are the tools. But does the research actually back up the fact that they make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. The article's packed with stats that show a clear link between resilience and effectiveness at work.
Okay.
For example, 50% of employee engagement, that feeling of being invested in your work, is directly tied to resilience. And resilient teams are 25% more productive overall.
Wow.
Yeah,
A quarter more productive.
that's huge.
That is huge. And I'm thinking, like, as a leader, if I could boost my team's output by 25%, that would be like, I'd be a hero.
Right. Makes sense when you think about it. When people are constantly stressed and overwhelmed, they're not doing their best work.
No.
But when they have the tools to manage those challenges, then their energy can go towards creativity, problem solving, and collaboration.
It's like removing those mental roadblocks.
Exactly.
And then everybody's kind of driving full speed ahead.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that really piqued my interest is this discussion around generational differences in resilience.
Yeah.
There's often an assumption that younger workers, those entitled millennials, those fragile Gen Z, are less resilient. But the psychologist in the second article actually pushes back on that stereotype.
It's really interesting because I think it's really easy to fall into those generational traps.
Hmm.
But it's important to remember that everyone faces challenges just in different ways.
Absolutely. Young people today have entered the workforce during times of incredible uncertainty. They've had economic downturns, rapid technological shifts, and even a global pandemic.
Not to mention the pressure cooker of social media, right?
Yes.
And the constant comparison, the FOMO.
Yes, absolutely.
That can be incredibly taxing on mental health.
It's not that they're inherently less resilient, they're just facing different battles than previous generations.
Right. And so I think instead of asking, why are young people so sensitive or whatever the question is, we should be asking, what support do they need to thrive in this environment?
Absolutely.
So that's a much more productive way to approach it.
Absolutely.
The psychologist also emphasizes the huge role that leadership plays in fostering resilience. And they even mention a study where supportive leadership was directly correlated with employee well-being.
Yes, it's not just about individual skills.
Right.
It's about the environment that leaders create.
So leaders set the tone for the entire organization.
Absolutely. If they model resilience, if they model empathy, if they model a willingness to learn from mistakes, it has a ripple effect.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of psychological safety,
Okay, I like that term.
where people feel comfortable speaking up, asking for help, taking risks.
So it's not enough for a leader to just say, we value resilience.
No.
They actually have to show their team what it looks like in action.
Walk the walk.
So how do they do that? What are some ways that leaders can make a difference?
Well, one way is to lead with empathy. That means actively listening to your team's concerns, acknowledging their struggles, and showing genuine care for their well-being.
So moving beyond the transactional, just get the work done.
Right.
And actually connecting with people on a human level.
Absolutely.
Because everybody's carrying something.
Yeah,
And those personal struggle inevitably, impact their work.
absolutely.
Another thing that you mentioned was fostering open communication.
Yes.
And I think this can be tricky in some work environments, but it's really about creating channels for feedback, both upwards and downwards. Employees need to feel comfortable sharing their challenging, knowing that they'll be met with support, not judgment.
Exactly. Leaders need to be willing to receive that feedback, to be open to learning and adapting their approach based on what they hear.
And that can be scary for some leaders because that level of, transparency and vulnerability. But if the leader isn't willing to be open, how can they expect the rest of their team to be?
Exactly. And it's not just about talking, it's about taking action based on that feedback.
Right.
So if employees are raising concerns about burnout or workload, leaders need to be willing to make adjustments to
Right.
prioritize well-being alongside productivity.
And that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say we care about our people, but sometimes that means saying no to a project or pushing back on a deadline or even restructuring roles to better support the team.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is.
Right.
Actions speak louder than words, especially when it comes to building trust and fostering a culture of resilience.
So we've talked about the importance of leadership, but the articles also highlight some pretty fascinating case studies of companies that have actually implemented resilience programs. One that jumped out at me was HCA Healthcare, which saw a dramatic reduction in turnover from 35% to 24% after implementing emotional intelligence and resilience training for their managers.
Wow, that's a huge shift.
That is a huge shift, and what I thought was really interesting is that they focused on training their leaders first.
Yes.
They recognize that change really starts at the top,
Yes.
that equipping those managers with the skills to lead with empathy, to foster open communication, to support their team's well-being would then have a ripple effect throughout the organization.
Exactly.
So they weren't just going to, throw a bunch of mindfulness apps at the problem.
Right.
They're like, we're going to create a culture of resilience from the ground up.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. Not only did they see a significant decrease in turnover, but they also saw improvements in employee engagement, in patient satisfaction, and even financial performance.
Incredible. So it's proof that investing in resilience is not just some, nice little extra perk.
Yeah,
It's a smart business strategy that can have a really tangible impact on the bottom line.
absolutely.
Another inspiring example was the Cleveland Clinic,
Okay.
which also saw impressive results after introducing emotional intelligence workshops.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a 30% reduction in employee turnover, and they reported that their staff felt much better equipped to handle stress and navigate challenging situations.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about saving money on recruiting and training.
Right.
It's about creating a work environment where people actually want to stay, where they feel supported, where they feel valued,
Yes.
and they can kind of bring their best selves to work each day.
Absolutely. These case studies really show that building a resilient workforce isn't just about individual well-being. It's about creating a more sustainable and successful organization.
Yeah.
When employees feel empowered to navigate challenges, everyone benefits.
Okay, and speaking of benefits, the research also highlighted a strong connection between emotional resilience and job satisfaction.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, one study found a 67% increase in job satisfaction and a 93% reduction in absenteeism after implementing resilience training.
Those numbers are compelling. When people feel equipped to manage stress, to bounce back from setbacks, they're less likely to experience burnout, they're less likely to disengage, they're less likely to take time off work,
They're less likely to quit.
they're more likely to feel fulfilled, productive, and committed to their work.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. It makes a very compelling argument for prioritizing resilience as a key organizational strategy. However, it's also important to acknowledge that some industries face very unique challenges when it comes to stress and burnout. The psychologist in the second article specifically addresses this and highlights the high-stress environment of healthcare as a prime example.
Makes sense because they're constantly dealing with, life or death situations, long hours, emotionally demanding interactions with patients and their families.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that burnout is such a widespread issue in that field.
And it's not just about individual coping mechanisms either.
Okay,
The psychologist emphasizes the importance of addressing systemic issues,
right.
like workload, like support systems, like organizational culture, to really create a more sustainable work environment for these professionals.
So it's about looking beyond individual resilience and really trying to create an environment that supports well-being from the ground up.
Yeah.
So what are some of the strategies that they recommend for tackling burnout, especially in high-stress industries like healthcare?
Well, they highlight the importance of promoting work-life balance, providing access to mental health resources, and fostering a culture of support and collaboration.
So it's really about recognizing that even the most resilient individuals need support and resources to thrive in these really demanding environments.
Absolutely. And creating a culture where it's okay to ask for help, to take breaks, and to prioritize self-care.
So it sounds like a pretty big cultural shift is needed in a lot of industries. What about the future of resilience in the workplace?
Well, that's a great question.
Where do we go from here?
The first article actually touches on some really interesting future trends.
Okay.
And one of the most significant ones is the rise of flexible work arrangements, which is, been accelerated by the pandemic.
Right.
Remote work, hybrid models are definitely here to stay.
Yeah.
But how does that impact resilience? That's the question. It's a double-edged sword, to be honest. On the one hand, flexible work can allow for better work-life balance. It can reduce stress. It can improve well-being.
Right.
But on the other hand, it can also lead to feelings of isolation. It can lead to blurred boundaries between work and personal life. And it can lead to, difficulty disconnecting from technology.
Right, because your office is right there,
Yeah.
in your living room, in your bedroom.
So it's not just about offering flexible work arrangements. It's about providing the support and the resources that people need to actually thrive in those environments.
So leaders need to be very proactive
Absolutely.
about fostering
Yeah.
connections and communication.
And a sense of community
Yeah.
among those remote and hybrid teams.
So even when people aren't physically together, you still have to create that culture of trust and support.
Absolutely.
Another trend the article mentioned is the unique challenges faced by Gen Z as they're entering the workforce.
Hmm.
And they are digital natives, but the article said only 56% of them feel prepared for customer-facing work. Now that surprised me.
It's a reminder that while Gen Z may be tech-savvy,
Yeah,
they still need support in developing those interpersonal and communication skills that are essential for success in many roles.
right.
They're entering a workforce that is increasingly complex and demanding, and they need the tools to navigate those challenges effectively.
So we can't just kind of throw them in the deep end and expect them to swim.
Right. We need to provide the training, the mentorship, the support that they need to thrive.
And finally, the article touched on the potential role of AI in promoting well-being.
Yeah.
And by 2024, so just around the corner, AI will be used to provide personalized advice and support to employees to help them manage stress and improve their overall well-being.
It's like having a virtual resilience coach in your pocket,
Yeah, like a little therapist bot.
offering tailored recommendations and support based on your needs.
But it also raises some really interesting questions, I think, about data privacy, algorithmic bias,
Mm-hmm.
and the potential for, over-reliance on technology.
Absolutely. So, as with any powerful tool, AI needs to be developed and implemented thoughtfully and ethically.
It's not just about the technology itself, it's
Right.
how we use it.
We need to ensure that AI is used to empower individuals, not control or manipulate them.
Exactly. So it's about using technology to augment human capabilities, not to replace human connection and empathy. This has been a fantastic overview. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, but it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
We have.
What areas are you most interested in kind of digging into a little bit deeper?
Well, I'm particularly intrigued by this intersection of technology and well-being. The potential for AI to personalize resilience-building interventions is immense,
Yeah,
but we need to carefully consider the ethical implications and ensure that the technology is used to empower, not exploit, individuals.
totally agree. And I'm also really curious to kind of delve into those specific challenges and strategies for fostering resilience in those remote and hybrid work environments.
Yeah.
Because as you said, they're here to stay. So, we've got to adapt our approach to support employee well-being in those new contexts.
Those are both excellent points. It seems we have a pretty rich agenda for the rest of our deep dive.
Yes.
I'm eager to continue the conversation and really uncover, even more valuable insights for our listener.
Me too. I think we've laid a really good foundation here, and I'm excited to see where this deep dive takes us next.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've talked about how important resilience is, and we know that it's something that individuals and organizations can actively build. But let's dig into this area you mentioned earlier, technology and well-being, specifically AI. This idea of AI playing a role in promoting resilience, it sounds kind of futuristic and a little intimidating, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rapidly evolving field, and it's totally natural to have those questions. But think about it like this. What if you had a virtual resilience coach available 24/7 that was providing you with personalized support, tailored just to you?
Okay, well, that does sound pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But how would that even work, practically speaking?
Okay, imagine this. AI that can track your mood and your stress levels and your sleep patterns, maybe through wearable tech or even just your smartphone usage.
Okay.
And then, based on that data, it could offer you tailored recommendations for managing stress. So maybe suggesting a breathing exercise when you're getting tense or reminding you to take a break when you've been staring at a screen for too long.
So it's like having a little therapist in your pocket,
Right.
nudging you towards healthier habits throughout the day. And I can see how that could be really helpful, especially for people who are already feeling overwhelmed and they don't even know where to start.
It's about providing that support in the moment right where it's needed most. But we also have to acknowledge the potential downsides, right? Data privacy, that's a major concern.
Yeah, I mean, who has access to all this information?
Exactly.
And how are they using it?
Those are questions that we really need to address. And then what about the potential for bias, right? AI algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on.
Right. And so if that data is skewed towards a certain demographic, couldn't that lead to recommendations that are not helpful or maybe even harmful for people outside that group?
It's a real risk, and it's something that the developers of these tools need to be very, very mindful of. We need to ensure that AI tools are trained on diverse data sets that represent a full spectrum of human experiences and needs.
Right. So it's a good reminder that AI is not just a magic solution. It's a tool that needs to be developed and used responsibly with a focus on equity and all those ethical considerations.
Absolutely. But I think even with those challenges in mind, the potential for good is immense, right? Imagine if we had AI that could help to identify individuals who are at risk of burnout early on, which would allow for those proactive interventions and support.
Especially in those high-stress industries.
Exactly. Healthcare, for example. Instead of waiting until people reach a crisis point, we could use AI to provide support before they burn out. It's about moving from a reactive to a proactive approach to well-being.
Which makes me think about the future of resilience training, right? Could AI be used to personalize those programs?
Yeah, that's already happening.
Oh, wow.
There are platforms that use AI to adjust the content, the pace, and the delivery methods of resilience training based on your individual progress and your preferences.
So it's like a custom-designed curriculum.
Yes, tailored to your strengths and weaknesses,
Okay.
and it can also provide that real-time feedback and support, which helps to keep you motivated and on track.
So it's like having a resilience coach guiding you every step of the way. But we should always remember, right, that technology is just one piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
Building a resilient workforce requires a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
We need to address both individual and organizational factors.
Absolutely. Technology can be a powerful tool, but it's not a substitute for human connection, for empathy, for a supportive workplace culture.
Okay, so let's shift geared a bit here and talk about this other trend we mentioned earlier, which was resilience in the context of all this remote and hybrid work. And that has really become, the new normal for so many companies. But it also presents its own set of unique challenges.
You're absolutely right. The traditional resilience building strategies, those often rely on in-person interactions, team building activities, a sense of community, and those things are all harder to foster in a virtual setting.
I mean, I feel that myself, just, being at home and working remotely, you can feel so isolated and disconnected when you're staring at a screen all day. You miss those casual conversations, those water cooler moments.
Yes.
Those help you to connect with your colleagues, and they build relationships and make you feel like you're part of something.
Absolutely. And that's the million-dollar question, right? How do we create that sense of belonging, that sense of community, when people aren't physically together?
Right. And then there's the blurring of boundaries between work and home life, right?
Hmm.
And it's so easy to just feel on all the time when your office is a few steps away from your bedroom.
It's exhausting. That's a huge challenge. And so resilience in these remote or hybrid work models, it really requires you to set clear boundaries between your work time and your personal time.
It's about being disciplined, creating those routines, and you have to be clear with your colleagues, your family, your housemates.
Exactly. It's about protecting your time and energy so you can disconnect and recharge. And it's also about recognizing that flexibility is a two-way street.
Okay.
Just as employees need flexibility to manage their personal lives, employers also need to be flexible in their expectations and in their communication styles.
It's a new way of working.
It is.
And so it requires a lot of adaptation and understanding on everyone's part. But leadership plays a huge role.
Absolutely.
How can leaders support their team's well-being and resilience when they're not there physically present?
It requires a shift in leadership style. One that emphasizes trust, empathy, clear communication.
Okay.
Leaders need to be proactive in checking in with their team members. And not just about work, but about how they're doing, how they're feeling.
Right.
They need to be tuned into those signs of stress, of burnout, of isolation.
Yeah.
And then they have to offer support.
So it's about creating that culture of psychological safety,
Yes.
even when everybody's remote.
It's about making it clear that it's okay to ask for help, that it's okay to share challenges, that it's okay to prioritize self-care. And leaders need to model those behaviors themselves. If you're telling your team to take breaks, to set boundaries, but then you're constantly sending emails at midnight, that's a mixed message.
Actions speak louder than words. It's about walking the walk. But I'm also curious about the role of technology in supporting all this.
Yeah.
I mean, are they specific tools or platforms that can help facilitate communication, collaboration, that sense of community? Because relying on email chains and endless Zoom meetings can get really exhausting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely tools designed to enhance communication and collaboration in virtual environments.
Okay.
Project management software, video conferencing platforms with breakout rooms for smaller group discussions. Even virtual reality tools are starting to emerge. Those can allow for more immersive, more engaging interactions. The options are really constantly evolving.
And what about tools specifically designed for promoting well-being and resilience?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've heard of, mindfulness apps and things like, those stress tracking wearables, but are there platforms that go beyond that, maybe even incorporating some of the AI stuff that we talked about earlier?
Absolutely. And there's actually a growing market for those tools, things that offer more personalized support. So guided meditations, breathing exercises. There are AI-powered chatbots that can actually provide mental health support and resources.
It's really interesting to see how all this technology is kind of being leveraged to support well-being, both on an individual and an organizational level.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also important that we approach these technologies with a critical eye and consider both the benefits and the potential risks.
All right, let's move on to the third area we were both interested in, which was this whole idea of generational differences in resilience. And I thought it was interesting that the psychologist in the article really pushed back on that stereotype of younger workers being less resilient.
I think it's a really important point because generalizations about entire generations are very rarely accurate or helpful.
Right.
Resilience is a complex trait, and it's influenced by so many different factors.
Not just age.
Exactly. So I think instead of focusing on generational stereotypes, we need to look at the specific pressures and the stressors that are faced by different groups, and then recognize that everyone's going to experience challenges. They're just going to manifest in different ways.
For example, younger workers are entering the workforce at a time of incredible uncertainty and upheaval. I mean, they've seen economic downturns, a global pandemic, rapid technological advancements that are constantly changing the nature of work.
And let's not forget the pressure of social media, the constant comparison, the fear of missing out, this relentless pursuit of perfection that's so prevalent online.
Those are pressures that previous generations never had to deal with.
The digital landscape has created a lot of new and very unique challenges for younger generations, and we have to acknowledge the impact that those have on their mental and emotional well-being.
So how do organizations go about tailoring resilience-building strategies to meet the needs of all these different generations? Because a one-size-fits-all approach probably isn't going to be very effective.
Well, the first step is understanding those needs, right?
Yeah?
Conducting surveys, focus groups, one-on-one conversations with employees. Those can give you some really valuable insights into the specific challenges and the stressors that different generations are facing within your organization.
It's about gathering the data. It's about listening to your employees. It's about understanding their unique perspectives.
Exactly. And once you have a better understanding of those needs, you can start to tailor your resilience-building strategies accordingly. So, for example, maybe younger workers could benefit from training programs that focus on managing stress related to social media, maybe navigating that rapidly changing job market, or setting healthy boundaries between work and personal life. Older workers, they might be dealing with stressors related to ageism or caring for their own aging parents,
Right.
or even adapting to new technologies. They may also have different learning styles and preferences compared to younger generations. It's really about being flexible, adaptable, and attuned to the individual needs of your employees, creating that culture of inclusivity
Yeah.
where everyone feels valued and supported.
Regardless of their age or experience.
Exactly. Resilience is a journey, not a destination. And it's going to look different for everyone.
Right.
And so organizations really need to provide that ongoing support and resources to help individuals to navigate those challenges that they face.
It's about recognizing that everybody has strengths, everybody has vulnerabilities,
Yes,
and creating an environment where people feel comfortable asking for help
absolutely.
and supporting each other. This has been so insightful. I mean, we've covered a lot today. The role of technology, the challenges of building resilience in those remote and hybrid work environments, the importance of understanding all those generational differences.
It's been a fascinating deep dive. And I hope that our listener is really gaining some valuable insights into the multifaceted nature of resilience.
Yeah, before we wrap up this section, I want to leave our listener with something to ponder.
Okay?
We've talked about building resilience to cope with stress and challenges, but what if we could go beyond just coping and actually use those experiences to fuel growth and innovation?
So you're talking about moving from resilience to anti-fragility,
Yes,
not just bouncing back from adversity, but actually becoming stronger because of it.
exactly. So instead of viewing challenges as obstacles to avoid, what if we saw them as opportunities to learn and grow and evolve? How can we shift our mindset, individually, but also as an organization, to create a culture that embraces those challenges as opportunities for positive change?
That's a really powerful question, and it's actually one that we're going to explore in depth in the next part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the concept of anti-fragility, and we'll discuss specific strategies for actually turning challenges into opportunities for growth and innovation.
That's awesome because I think that is such an empowering way to think about challenges, both for individuals and for companies. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about this whole anti-fragility thing, and it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. So resilience, we know, is bouncing back from challenges.
Right.
But anti-fragility, it seems like it takes it to another level.
It does.
Like you're actually getting better because of those tough situations. Like,
Yeah.
it almost seems counterintuitive, right?
It kind of goes against our natural inclination to avoid discomfort. Yeah.
Right.
But think about it this way, like muscles don't grow from sitting on the couch.
No.
They grow from being challenged, from being pushed.
Right.
And so anti-fragility is kind of applying that same principle to our mental and emotional muscles
Yeah.
and even to our organizations.
Okay, so the weightlifting analogy, I get that. But how do we practically lift weights with these work challenges? How do we turn, like, a missed deadline or a project that totally flopped? How do we make that into something that actually benefits us?
Well, it all starts with a mindset shift, right?
Okay.
Instead of viewing these moments as failures that need to be, swept under the rug, we have to reframe them. We have to see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay.
Imagine like a company culture where instead of pointing fingers when something goes wrong, everyone's first instinct is, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we do better next time?
So you're shifting from a blame culture to a learning culture.
Exactly.
But that's, again, easier said than done because people get defensive, they worry about looking bad, they might be afraid to admit that they made a mistake.
Of course. I mean, those are natural human reactions. That's why leadership is so crucial here.
Right.
If leaders can model that vulnerability, if they can model that willingness to admit mistakes and to really extract the lessons from them, it starts to set the tone for the rest of the organization. It creates that safe space, where people can experiment, they can take risks, and they know that even if it doesn't go perfectly, it's not the end of the world.
So it's about fostering a culture where failure isn't this like terrible thing.
Exactly.
But again, what are some actual steps, tangible steps that leaders can take to make that happen?
Well, one powerful tool is feedback,
Okay.
but it has to be feedback that's focused on growth and not judgment. So instead of saying you messed this up, it's about asking, well, what could you have done differently? What did you learn from this experience?
So you're turning those post-mortem meetings into opportunities for like reflection and improvement, not just dwelling on what went wrong.
Exactly. And feedback should flow in all directions, not just from managers down to employees.
Right.
Creating a culture where employees feel comfortable giving feedback upwards, sharing their perspectives and their ideas can be incredibly valuable.
But that requires trust
It does.
because employees have to know that their feedback will be taken seriously,
Absolutely.
that it's not going to be used against them.
Trust is the foundation of a healthy feedback culture. And that trust is built through consistent action. Leaders need to demonstrate that they're listening, that they're making adjustments based on what they hear, and that they recognize the value of those diverse perspectives.
So feedback is one tool. What else can leaders do to foster this like anti-fragile mindset?
Well, encouraging reflection and self-awareness is a huge one.
Okay.
After a challenging experience, whether it's an individual setback or, even a team-wide failure, taking the time to really pause, to reflect on what happened, what did we learn, how can we apply those lessons going forward? That's essential.
So it's not just about putting out the fire, it's about learning from the fire so you don't start another one.
Exactly. Some companies even build that reflection time into their project cycles.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So after a launch, after a campaign, they'll have a dedicated period of time for the team to just come together and debrief not just on the outcomes, but on the process itself. What went well? What could have been done better? What did we learn about ourselves and each other as a team?
It's like turning those lessons learned bullet points into actual actionable insights.
Exactly. And this reflection, it doesn't have to be some formal team exercise. Encouraging individuals to journal, to practice mindfulness, to engage in any kind of self-reflective practice that helps them process their experiences, that helps them develop that self-awareness. It's so valuable.
Because the more you understand yourself, your pattern, your triggers, the better equipped you are to handle stress, to deal with those challenges, and ultimately to make those smarter decisions.
Exactly. Self-awareness is really the foundation of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is the key to unlocking that resilience and anti-fragility.
And that's something that, we can all work on,
We can.
no matter what our job is, what industry we're in.
It's a lifelong journey.
And the journey's a lot easier when you have support.
It is.
Mentors, colleagues, friends, family, people who can offer guidance and encouragement and, maybe a different way of looking at things. Mentorship has been huge for me. Having someone you trust to bounce ideas off of, to vent, to celebrate those little wins, to get advice when you're feeling lost.
Mentorship and strong support systems are essential for navigating the ups and downs of work and life.
Right.
And it's not just about seeking support when things are tough. It's also about celebrating those successes together, sharing lessons learned, creating a culture of continuous learning and growth.
That's a great way to put it. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into emotional resilience and anti-fragility, I want to leave our listeners with this. Imagine yourself not just surviving challenges, but thriving because of them.
Yeah,
Imagine a work environment where setbacks are seen as opportunities, where feedback is a gift, and where everyone feels supported to learn and grow and become the best version of themselves.
what a powerful vision.
It is.
And it's not some utopian fantasy.
Right.
This is a reality we can create, one step at a time, one conversation at a time, one challenge at a time.
So, what's one small step that you can take today as a listener to start building a more resilient and anti-fragile culture?
Yeah, think about that.
Maybe it's sharing this deep dive with a colleague. Maybe it's starting a conversation about feedback. Or maybe it's just taking a moment to reflect on a recent challenge and what you learned from it.
Yeah.
Remember, even those small changes, they can create a ripple effect. They can create a more engaged, more productive, and ultimately a more fulfilling work experience for everyone. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep learning, keep growing, keep pushing beyond that comfort zone.